Resident Evil.
How's it going, guys? Today we're going to be taking a look at the Resident Evil HD remaster, and we're going to be taking a look at it on the Xbox One off of the Resident Evil Origins collection. This is actually a remake of a remake. This is a remake of the GameCube remake, which was a remake of the original PlayStation 1 and Sega Saturn 90s classic of the first Resident Evil game. This disc is also paired up with Resident Evil 0, but we will not be taking a look at that in this video. We'll be taking a look at that in a future video, so you guys have something to look forward to in the future. But without further ado, guys, we're going to be taking a look at survival horror's premiere classic game. This is a title that is beloved amongst horror fans and survival horror gamers alike. Guys, I hope you all enjoy the video. Now, I don't know what it is. I don't want to say that this is my favorite Resident Evil game, because I'm a big fan of a lot of the other games in the series, especially Resident Evil 4, but of course that game has a much different tone. I even was a big fan of Resident Evil 5, which was very controversial amongst many fans. But there's something about this game and the fact that, it is known for its setting, it's known for the mansion, it's known for setting all of the events of Resident Evil into the future and for all the games to come. So we all come back to this game. I believe all fans come back to this game eventually for another playthrough, to look at it, to analyze it, to see exactly what this game did right. And it did do a lot of right, even with the original's tank controls, which were, for lack of a better term, abysmal. I believe that is the right term. You can actually play this remaster with those controls. I definitely would not recommend it. I tried it again. And it had been, quite a few years since my last playthrough of the PlayStation version. And I gotta tell you, those controls absolutely sucked. I mean, they were horrific. I mean, for the time, they were doable. Certainly, I don't know how I played through the whole game like that. I guess when you have to, that's one thing. We were kind of spoiled, but man, oh man, those were really some lousy controls. Playing it with this setup, and I'm going to get to why the controls are not absolutely perfect, but they are sure as hell better than they were on the PlayStation. And I had forgotten that this was actually the original control scheme for the GameCube version as well. This is a really interesting study to take a look at this game, and it just has so many classic horror elements. You've got your zombies, you've got the mansion. I mean, everyone thinks of the haunted house. It's like probably the most classic horror trope. Also, that iconic first-person view you enter into when you go through a door. Just something so eerie about that. I absolutely love it. It's very unique and a very interesting idea that they came up with, just to add a little something extra to the suspense and horror element. And to have it all start off in the mansion, in the very first title in the series, is a very interesting choice, and I think it was a very wise choice in retrospect. It really lets you know that this series is steeped in horror, and that's where it's going to be rooted pretty much for the rest of Resident Evil's existence in the gaming world. Even though it's had many iterations, they've added adventure and traveling around and, maybe some not so horror elements. That's been the most controversial part of the series, of it being way too action oriented and getting away from the survival horror element. And that's the thing here. It started the whole survival element. Now, it's controversial to say that this is the game that started survival horror, but let it be known that it is definitely the game that popularized it, without a doubt. Okay, well, that's enough gushing about the legacy of this great game. let's talk about what this game has to offer in terms of the graphics department, and it is an incredible overhaul. Even watching some videos on YouTube and seeing how the game looked on the GameCube, the comparisons are beyond noticeable. I mean, of course, we're talking about, you know, a giant leap here. We're talking about a big gap in generations. Of course, this game looks spectacular. You know, you take a look at the faces, you take a look at the environments. I mean, the mansion looks beautiful. These environments just look amazing. It's so glorious to look at, and well, that's kind of a term that perhaps, you know, could be debatable. I mean, it looks glorious, but there is just something about this game. It looks realistic. It definitely does. And I gotta tell you, like, the game seriously was creeping me out. I mean, the realism is off the charts, and it really sucks you in. And you really feel that this is a dirty, dingy mansion that has many hidden secrets, you know, both literally and from the sense of the story itself. You really feel a great sense of unease. I mean, really, you combine that with the sound design, and you just have a recipe here for just a classic horror experience. And we got to talk about the camera angles also. I mean, they're really dynamic. They really add to it. There is many parts where the camera really plays a great role in what you're seeing on screen. Like, I felt like if the camera was pointed in another direction, you probably wouldn't get the same experience. There's definitely a sense of defined cinematography. They really made these angles kind of create a story of their very own and really conveying what they were trying to tell on screen. And it's more greatly emphasized in the remake, of course, you know, that higher definition. And of course, with more realistic graphics, you feel more afraid. I mean, you know, kind of with the PlayStation graphics, you know, for the time they looked good, but now in retrospect, I mean, now this is really terrifying. I mean, you're seeing these zombies, you're seeing these creatures, and they look real and they're grotesque. And combine that with the dynamic camera angles, and you've got a really scary combination here. And it was really effective. And it definitely, it does not have a happy feel. Like, you're happy to play the game, you're enjoying yourself playing this classic title, but you feel a sense of dread overcoming you. You know, you feel scared. You know, when you open a door, you know, you get that same classic view of the door as you open it, but you feel so uneasy, so unsure of yourself. You feel like you could die at any moment, that you could run into a zombie or a creature or like a hunter later on in the game. We also got to talk about the Crimson Heads and the fact that that wasn't even in the original game. Now you have to worry about burning a zombie's body or decapitating it to truly kill it. If not, then the zombie might get up later on in the game when you return to a certain area of the mansion, and it will come after you once more. I found that to be truly terrifying and really added to the great sense of unease that the game already possessed. So let's talk a little bit about that story. This game sees the team of Stars, which is a division of Raccoon City's police force, and they're there to investigate the disappearance of their fellow team members who were sent out to investigate some bizarre murders on the outskirts of the city. They come upon their crashed helicopter and get chased by a bunch of zombified dogs, and they run in to a mansion. Oh, how convenient. You know, right away, the classic horror trope of just running into a building to avoid danger, only to come upon even more danger. You know, you gotta think maybe if they ran in a whole nother direction, they wouldn't come upon the evil underground laboratory of the Umbrella Corporation. And that's what's going on below the foundation of this mansion. It's a huge mansion with so many secrets and so many horrors and so many traps. It's a really well-designed main map. And this remake adds a lot of different areas, such as the graveyard and a few others for you to explore. So it's all unraveling as you go through. This is another game where I feel like the story doesn't get in the way. This is kind of when they were still experimenting with cutscenes and making games super cinematic, but they didn't go overboard. You know, you still get to play a lot of the game. You get to still interact with the environment. You feel like you're in control of your character. Now you get to choose between Chris Redfield or Jill Valentine. I don't believe I've ever played as Chris. Even for this playthrough, I did the same thing I did with the PlayStation version. I went with Jill. Now, Jill could take less punishment than Chris can, but she could carry 2 more items. And with a game like this where item management is so important, you're damn right I went with Jill, and I just like her more as a character. I don't know what it is. It's not like she's got a big personality. It's not like either of them are bursting with personality, but these are likable characters. I like their designs, and they just kind of stand out as just, you know, classic video game icons. And, you know, it's all about, you know, getting out of this mansion. And you also learn about a traitor in the mist of stars. And it's a big mystery. People are dying. People are turning into zombies. It's one thing after another. It's a series of unfortunate events. And I really like how the story unfolds. And the game always is introducing new elements and keeps upping the ante. You know, you've got giant spiders. You've got giant snakes. You've got huge tyrants coming after you, booby traps of all different designs and different ways that the mansion is trying to kill you. The game never stops. You know, it's got great pacing, of course. You know, there's just times when you're walking through corridors, you don't know if you're going to get attacked. Sometimes you don't get attacked, and that's what adds to it. It really definitely has that classic horror movie vibe of you really don't know what to expect. You don't know what's around that next corner and what's behind that next door. And then when the game starts throwing the hunters and the crimson heads at you, that's when things really get unnerving, and I really like that feeling. Like, I can't express enough how that sense of dread was overcoming me at every single moment during the game, and that it really felt like more so in this remake, they really got to finally accomplish what they wanted to do back in the PlayStation days. Not that they didn't accomplish it to a certain extent, but now with more realism and more technology, I gotta say, this is one of those times where I really feel like a modern game really capitalized on something that the original just couldn't do. You know, just with better sound design, more dynamic camera angles. You know, they've mastered 3D gaming in a certain respect that they couldn't do back in the day. You know, you compare that with the tank controls, and things just work a lot better. They come off so much better in this version of the game, and I can't stress that enough. Now, the interesting thing of how the story is told is that there's no one left after all these evil experiments. So you have to read about it in documents and notes that you find around the environment. Then all the way at the end, when you finally make your way to the underground lab where all the Umbrella experiments have taken place, you find that Albert Wesker is the double agent. I think this is a really great swerve. Of course, you know, as the story progresses, you kind of see this coming. There's one particular moment where you know that, you know, there's going to be some sort of a turn, and, you know, someone's going to be pulling a gun on somebody, and you learn little by little about the T virus. And one thing about the remake that they added in, you know, you really see just how evil the Umbrella Corporation is when you learn about Lisa Trevor. and you see for yourselves the horrors of their experimentation and what they've done to a poor innocent girl. And I gotta say, like, the moments when you encounter Lisa are very uncomforting, especially when you learn her story. The encounter in the cabin is extremely creepy, how that turns out. And then when you meet her again underground, when you don't expect to see her, that encounter is extremely unnerving. Now, if there's a big flaw in this game, I would say it actually is a mixture of those dynamic camera angles and the controls. And what I mean by that is when the camera switches perspective, which is very frequent, I've noticed that, it can be very disorienting. Back in the original version, and it had been a while since I played that game, you had to readjust. If the camera switched, you had it to correspond to that camera switch, and the directions on the controls would change. Up would become down, down would become up. So moving your character could definitely be a true headache. That is still true to a certain extent, but a much lesser extent. If you keep your finger pressed down on the analog stick, you'll still keep moving in the same direction even when the camera changes. But this I found to be very confusing, and you're not going to know really what I'm talking about. Like, Brad, just don't take your finger off the joystick. And I'm like, yeah, okay, I know that, but play the game and see exactly what I'm talking about. Disorienting is a state of mind, and until you actually wrap your hands around the controller and actually play the game, you won't know what I'm talking about. And I definitely felt that, especially when you get to the tunnels. I can't stress enough, when this boulder is coming after me and the camera changed and, it goes to a different angle on the tunnel, I got crushed a few times and I was pissed because of this damn camera. I'm like, I love these camera angles. I like the cinematic presentation. But sometimes these dramatic switches are just a little bit too sudden and jarring to properly adjust to. And also, the item management still to this day is extremely annoying. You do get item boxes where you can magically get an item that you have in your inventory. You could save it for later and pick it up in another section of the map. Yes, of course, that's, completely unrealistic, but, you're going to simply love it in the context of this game. I do appreciate that realism, even dating back to the original 1996 release. But when you have to constantly backtrack and manage your items, and if you have too much ammo and you need this key and you need this other item on top of it, and then there's one point when you have to carry a bunch of masks with you, 4 masks that act as keys, that is a true headache, and I really kind of disliked. I didn't really hate it. It's, not that big of a deal. That you have to keep going back and forth between these item boxes and switching things out, and then if you want to save the game, you have to take out an ink ribbon, and you're so panicked all the time in the game that you want to save, but you only have limited saves based on the number of ink ribbons. But they do give you enough ink ribbons. I never was short on ink ribbons. You just got to be strategic with your saves. You got to save pretty much when you done like something major, something difficult in the game. And there is a very fair challenge. There's limited ammo, which also adds to the stressful nature of the game, the premise that it's trying to drive home. They're trying to scare you. Oh, if you use too much of your ammo up here, you might not have enough for later. And then you have to worry also about getting those headshots in. If you don't decapitate zombies, or if you don't use your lighter and kerosene, guess what? Those zombies are going to come back as crimson heads. So that also, on top of everything else, also adds to that strenuous nature that the game puts forth. And I gotta say, I really loved every moment of it. But yeah, managing all the items could be a giant pain in the tuchus, to say the least. I also have to address a complaint, the fact that they were extremely lazy with the pre-rendered cutscenes in this HD remaster, because they're the same they're the same ones that were featured in the GameCube original remake version. And this just looks horrific, especially when the in-game graphics look a ton of the way better than the pre-rendered stuff. They're all fuzzy and muddy, and they look just horrific on this hardware. I don't know how they looked on the original GameCube version, but they look really bad here. I just have to ask myself, couldn't they have just gone the extra mile and just redid these cutscenes? Because, you know, if they were going to have these and they're supposed to look impressive, that they actually cut away from the in-game graphics, you expect to see something superior looking, but you see something that just looks absolutely dreadful. And I couldn't really ignore that. I mean, these pre-rendered cutscenes don't really come up that much, only like when a big event takes place, something pivotal in the story, you know, you're introduced to a new area or something like that. But it's pretty unacceptable, I have to say. Now, if I had to pick a favorite moment from the entire game, we'll probably say the most memorable moment. It's iconic, to say the least. I think it redefined what it means to be a jump scare in a video game, and that's when the dogs burst through the windows in this narrow corridor. I absolutely love this scene. I remember the first time that it happened, and it occurred before my eyes, and it scared the living daylights out of me, and I'll never forget that moment. And I think that really defines what Resident Evil is all about, and what this game did for the industry and did for survival horror. So for me, I go back to this scene when someone wants to bring up Resident Evil and all the great memories that it brings forth. So this is the image that pops into my mind when I think of Resident Evil. Well, guys, that just about does it for this review. I hope you guys all enjoyed it, and if you haven't played this remake before, I really hope that I've convinced you to do so. There's just some minor flaws here and there, but it's really a great game and a great remake of a great classic game. So guys, please subscribe if you haven't already. Click the bell so you get all the notifications when I post all my new videos. And I want to thank all my patrons. And guys, thank you all for watching. I'll see you next time.